The gun was pressed so hard against Gabriel's neck that Sophia saw the skin go white. "Tell her who you really are," her father said, smiling for the wedding cameras as if this were part of the ceremony. And Gabriel, standing there in a cheap black suit with blood at the corner of his mouth, looked at Sophia and whispered, "If I tell you now, you'll never be safe again." If stories like this get under your skin and stay there long after the screen goes dark, subscribe, like the video, and tell me where you're watching from. Because this one doesn't just break your heart, it tests it. Nobody moved. The string quartet had stopped in the middle of a note. The flowers trembled in the wind. Sophia could hear her own pulse pounding inside her ears as guests turned their heads, pretending not to enjoy the humiliation while enjoying every second of it. Arthur Laurent lowered the gun just enough to make his point. "This is your last chance," he said to his daughter. "You can still walk away from this embarrassment and marry a man worthy of your name." Damien Cross, the man her father had wanted for her since childhood, stood a few feet away in a silver tie, wearing that polished, pitying expression rich men use when they think someone else's life belongs to them. Sophia looked at Gabriel. He wasn't handsome in the dangerous, magazine cover way Damien was. Gabriel looked real. Tired eyes, scar near his jaw, hands rough from steering wheels and long shifts and winter mornings. He looked like every hard year had touched him and never apologized. But he had also been the one who sat with her mother through chemo when Arthur was too busy. The one who drove Sophia 3 hours in the rain just so she could see the ocean the day after her mother lost her hair. The one who never asked for anything. "Ask him," Arthur said. "Ask your poor driver where he was before he came to work for me. Ask him why there are no records that make sense. Ask him why a man like him knows how to keep his mouth shut when a gun is in his face." Sophia's throat tightened. She should have asked. A normal woman would have. But Sophia had spent 26 years inside a world where everyone lied beautifully, and the only person who ever told her the truth had done it in silence. So instead, she stepped forward, took Gabriel's shaking hand and said, "I'm marrying him." The gasp that tore through the garden felt almost physical. Arthur laughed first, a low, ugly laugh. Then he leaned close enough for only her to hear and said, "Then don't come back when poverty teaches you what love never could." He stepped away. The priest was frozen. Damien looked insulted on behalf of the universe. One of Sophia's aunts whispered, "She's throwing her life away." Maybe she was. But Sophia lifted her chin and said, "Continue." So they got married, under a sky that felt too blue for the violence happening beneath it. And when Gabriel slid the ring onto her finger, his hand trembled so hard she covered it with hers. Not because he was poor, not because her father hated him. Because in that moment, Sophia realized the strangest thing of all. Gabriel wasn't trembling like a weak man. He was trembling like a man holding back something enormous. That should have scared her. Instead, it became the first secret she loved. By nightfall, Arthur had frozen Sophia's accounts. By morning, every family contact she had ever known had stopped answering her calls. The apartment Gabriel rented sat above a closed tailor shop on a narrow street that smelled like fried onions and rain. The ceiling leaked near the kitchen. The water heater made a banging sound at 3 in the morning. The mattress was thin enough to memorize their bones. And for the first time in her life, Sophia slept without medication. The world she came from had always been soft and expensive and cold. This place was loud. Pipes groaned. Neighbors argued. Babies cried through walls. But Gabriel made tea in a dented kettle. He folded her sweaters like they mattered. He apologized for things that weren't his fault. "I'm sorry," he said on their third night there, when the electricity cut out and the room went black. For what? For bringing you here. Sophia found his face in the dark with her fingers. Home isn't where the lights stay on, she said softly. Home is where no one makes you afraid. He closed his eyes when she said that, like it hurt. The first year of their marriage was stitched together with almosts. Almost enough money, almost enough time, almost enough peace. Gabriel drove 12, sometimes 14 hours a day. Airport runs, night shifts, drunk businessmen, hotel pickups. Sometimes he came home smelling like gasoline and old leather, so tired he fell asleep sitting up. Sophia got work mending clothes in the shop downstairs, then bookkeeping for the owner when his eyesight worsened. They laughed more than rich people ever do. They also fought in small, ashamed ways, over bills, over missed meals, over Gabriel refusing to tell her where he disappeared every Thursday night. At least tell me if it's another job, Sophia snapped once as he buttoned his shirt in silence. It's not what you think. That's what people say when they want you to imagine something worse. He stared at the floor for a moment, then looked up. When it's safe, I'll tell you. Sophia hated that answer instantly. Safe for who? But he kissed her forehead before leaving, and for some reason the sadness in that kiss scared her more than any lie could have. Then came the baby. For 6 weeks, Sophia carried a happiness so fragile she was afraid to say it out loud. Gabriel started smiling to himself for no reason. He touched her stomach like he was greeting a miracle through glass. He picked up extra shifts. He stopped buying coffee outside. He fixed the leak in the ceiling with his own hands after watching 3 videos and cursing at every nail. This child, he said one night, kneeling on the floor with blue paint on his fingers, is never going to feel ashamed of where they come from. Sophia laughed through tears. Where do they come from? He looked at her in that steady, painful way he had. From us. That's enough. It should have been enough. But when Arthur Laurent wanted to punish someone, he didn't do it loudly. He did it elegantly. One afternoon, the tailor shop owner came upstairs with red eyes and a folded notice in his hand. The building had been sold. Everyone had 30 days to leave. A week later, Sophia's bookkeeping client dropped her without explanation. Then Gabriel's car was vandalized. Then his license got delayed over an administrative issue no one could explain. The stress settled into Sophia's body like winter. On a gray morning with cold rain needling the windows, she started bleeding. Gabriel carried her down 3 flights of stairs in his arms because the elevator had died again. At the hospital desk, the woman asked for a deposit before treatment. Sophia still remembered the way Gabriel's voice sounded when he begged. Not loud, not proud, not angry, just broken. Please, he said. She's losing the baby. By the time they took her inside, the child was gone. And what Sophia never forgot was this. Gabriel didn't cry in the hospital room. He cried outside, alone, in the parking lot, under a rusted sign, with both hands over his face like a man ashamed to be seen mourning something the world had never even met. That was the day part of Sophia's anger changed shape. Until then, she had hated her father for disowning her. After that, she hated him for proving he was still close enough to destroy what he couldn't control. When Gabriel came back into the room, his eyes were swollen. I'm sorry, he whispered. Sophia turned toward him weakly. For what? And this time his answer came too fast. For being who I am. She stared at him. Not for not protecting her. Not for being poor. Not for failing. For being who I am. She should have forced the truth out right there. But grief makes cowards out of people in unexpected ways. Instead, she closed her eyes and let the question live. Time moved anyway. It always does. 2 years later, Sophia gave birth to a daughter with Gabriel's dark eyes and her mother's stubborn mouth. They named her Lucia, because after so much darkness, the word light felt like a dare. Gabriel changed around that child. He still worked like a man being chased, but when he held Lucia, the chase disappeared for a minute. He sang to her in a language Sophia didn't know. He built her a crib from old wood he found behind a repair shop. He woke at the smallest sound she made, as if sleep itself no longer deserved him. And still, the secrets continued. He had nightmares. Real ones. Not tossing and turning, not muttering. The kind that made him sit up gasping, scanning the room like someone had trained his body never to trust darkness. Once, Sophia woke to find him on the floor beside Lucia's crib, a knife in his hand. He looked more shocked than she did. "I heard something," he said. "It's the radiator." He stared at the knife, then set it down slowly, as if ashamed it had appeared in his hand at all. "Gabriel," Sophia whispered, "what happened to you before me?" He didn't answer. That silence became the third person in their marriage. Arthur re-entered their lives publicly when Lucia turned 4. By then, he was no longer just a powerful businessman. He was everywhere. Magazine covers, charity galas, economic forums. There were rumors he'd enter politics. News channels called him disciplined, visionary, self-made. Sophia nearly threw a glass at the television the first time she heard it. Self-made. As if the man hadn't built half his empire on bruised people and buried favors. Then Damien came back too. Smoother, older, crueler in a more polished way. He found Sophia outside Lucia's school one afternoon and stepped out of a black car like the years between them had been nothing. "You look tired," he said, glancing at her coat, her worn shoes, the grocery bag cutting into her fingers. "You still look expensive," Sophia replied. He smiled. "Arthur wants to see his granddaughter." "Arthur lost that right at my wedding." Damien leaned closer. "You think this is about rights? It's about reality. A child like Lucia belongs in security, not in whatever life your driver has dragged you into." Sophia's eyes flashed. "He's my husband." Damien's smile thinned. "Is he? You know almost nothing about him." That line should not have landed, but it did. That night, Sophia waited until Lucia was asleep. "What does Damien know about you?" she asked. Gabriel stopped unlacing his boots. "I don't know." "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Answer like a stranger. I buried a baby with you. I built a life with you. I deserve more than half-truths." He sat down slowly, elbows on knees. In the kitchen, the refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a siren passed and kept going. "I wanted to tell you 100 times," he said quietly. "Then why didn't you?" His jaw tightened. "Because every version of the truth ends with you in danger." "That's not your decision to make." "No," he said, finally looking up. "It's the only decision I've ever made that kept you alive." Sophia stepped back. There it was again. Not fear for himself, fear for her. And the worst part was, she believed him. Then came the night that almost ended everything. Gabriel was supposed to be on a late airport shift. Sophia couldn't sleep, so she walked to the pharmacy for medicine for Lucia's fever. On the way back, she saw him. Across the street, under the white lights of a hotel entrance. Not in his driver's jacket. In a dark, tailored suit that fit him too well. Talking to a woman with silver hair and a government badge hanging from her coat pocket. The woman handed him a sealed envelope. Gabriel slid it inside his jacket and before turning away, scanned the street with the alertness of a man who expected danger from corners. Sophia froze. He looked nothing like her exhausted husband in that moment. He looked trained, precise, deadly. He looked like the answer to every question she had never wanted to ask. When he came home, she was waiting. "Who is she?" He stopped. Sophia rarely saw fear on his face. Tonight it came and went like lightning. "You followed me?" "I saw you. Don't turn this on me. Who is she?" He closed the door carefully behind him. "She's someone from before." "Before what?" "Before this life." Sophia laughed once, sharp and hurt. "Do you hear yourself? You talk like a man wearing somebody else's skin." He took a step forward. "Sophia." "No! You don't get to say my name like that unless you finally tell me the truth." He was silent too long. And sometimes silence is a confession. So Sophia said the ugliest thing she had ever said to him. "Were you ever even poor?" His face changed. Not angry, not offended, wounded. "As poor as anyone who loses everything," he said. That answer made her chest ache because it sounded honest, and she didn't know what to do with an honest answer that explained nothing. A week later, Gabriel was arrested. 2 officers stopped him outside Lucia's school. Parents stared. Phones came out. Damien watched from across the street beside his car, pretending surprise badly. The charge was theft from a former client's vehicle. Sophia knew it was a lie the second she heard it. Gabriel, who counted coins before buying bread, had never taken a dollar that wasn't his. But what shattered her wasn't the arrest. It was what one of the officers said while pushing Gabriel into the car. "You should have stayed dead, Voss." Gabriel's eyes shot toward the officer. Just for a second. But Sophia saw it. And in that second, the ground beneath her marriage cracked open. Voss. That night, with Lucia asleep and fear crawling like ice under her skin, Sophia searched the apartment like a criminal. She hated herself for it. She kept going anyway. Inside a loose floorboard beneath the bed, she found a metal box. No cash, no drugs, no mistress's letters. Passports with different names. A military insignia. A photograph of a younger Gabriel standing beside 3 people in tactical gear. And an old newspaper clipping, folded so many times it was soft at the edges. International investigator Adrian Voss, presumed dead after port explosion. The photo was grainy, but it was him. A little younger, cleaner haircut. Same scar, same eyes. Sophia sank to the floor. Her husband had not just lied. Her husband had died. Or the world thought he had. Taped inside the lid of the box was a small voice recorder. Her hand shook so badly she nearly dropped it. When she pressed play, static crackled first. Then a woman's voice came through. Weak, breathless, familiar. Sophia stopped breathing. It was her mother. "If you're hearing this," Isabel whispered, "then Arthur has done what I feared. Sophia, listen to me. The trucks were never just trucks. I saw manifests that didn't match, medical shipments that changed routes at night. Children moved like cargo through ports your father controls. I went to the authorities, but one of them was bought. Adrian Voss is the only man I found who wasn't." Sophia pressed a hand over her mouth. The recording continued. "If anything happens to me, trust him. Even if he lies to protect you. Especially then." The message ended in static. Sophia sat there in the dark while the apartment seemed to tilt around her. Her father. Her mother. The husband she loved. The dead man beneath his skin. Nothing in her life was where she had left it. Then the phone rang. Lucia's school. Her daughter was gone. The next minutes came apart in flashes. Sophia dropping the phone. The world narrowing. A teacher crying. A witness saying a well-dressed man claimed to be Lucia's uncle. Damien. It had Damien written all over it. By the time Sophia reached the school, Gabriel was already there. Not in handcuffs, not confused, waiting. Something in him had changed completely. The softness was still there, but buried now under steel. "How did you get out?" Sophia demanded. "I was never really in." Her laugh came out like a sob. "Of course." He stepped closer. "Sophia, listen to me. Damien took her because Arthur knows I'm close. He thinks this will force me into the open." "You're already in the open," she cried. "Who are you?" For a second, his face almost broke. "My name is Adrian Voss. Gabriel Reyes was the identity I used when I infiltrated your father's company 6 years ago." "Infiltrated?" "Yes." "You married me." "I know." The words hit like glass. She slapped him. Hard. He didn't move. Tears flooded her eyes immediately. Not because she regretted it, because some part of her had wanted him to stop her, and he wouldn't. "Was any of it real?" she whispered. His answer came so fast it hurt. "You are the only real thing I have left." Sophia looked away, because if she looked at him too long, she might believe him before she was ready. "Then find my daughter," she said. "And after that, you tell me everything." He nodded once. They drove through the city in silence, but it was not the silence of marriage anymore. It was the silence of two people strapped to the same explosion. On the way, Adrian told her the pieces. Years earlier, he had led an international task force investigating a trafficking network hidden inside luxury freight routes. The evidence kept circling back to Laurent Global Logistics. Before the case could close, an explosion at a coastal port killed his team, or so the world believed. Adrian survived, barely. Someone inside the operation had leaked their location. He vanished, took the identity of a man already dead, went back underground. And then Isabelle Laurent found him. "She knew," Sophia whispered from the passenger seat, numb. "She knew enough to be afraid," he said. "She gave me route numbers, names, schedules. Then she got sick too fast." "You think my father killed her?" Adrian's grip tightened on the wheel. "I think she was silenced before she could testify." Sophia stared ahead through the windshield, city lights smearing across the glass. "And me?" she asked. His voice dropped. "You were never supposed to matter." That should have made her hate him. Instead, it devastated her. Because of the way he said it. Like loving her had ruined every careful plan he had ever made. The trail led them to an old Laurent storage yard at the river's edge, half abandoned, fenced in rust, guarded by men pretending to be private security. Sophia wanted to run inside screaming for Lucia. Adrian caught her wrist. "If you go in blind, we lose her." "You don't get to order me around." "No," he said, eyes locked on hers. "But I'm asking you to trust the man who sat outside your hospital room and wanted to die because he couldn't save your child." That memory hit so hard she went still. He hadn't mentioned the baby in years. Maybe because the grief was still alive in both of them. Maybe because grief never dies. It just learns your routines. Adrian spoke quickly into an earpiece Sophia hadn't noticed before. 2 dark vehicles cut their lights half a block away. "You brought a team?" "I called in ghosts," he said. Then he stepped out of the car and became someone Sophia had never met. Fast, quiet, terrifying. What followed barely felt real. A guard dropped without a sound. A gate chain snapped. Voices shouted. Glass shattered. A flashlight beam jerked across metal crates. And then Lucia's scream tore through the yard. Sophia ran. Inside a warehouse office, Damien had Lucia by the arm, using her small body like a shield while backing toward the loading bay. "There he is," Damien called out when Adrian appeared in the doorway. "The dead hero. You really married well, Sophia." Lucia was sobbing. "Mama!" Sophia took one step and Damien pressed something cold to Lucia's side. Not a gun. A box cutter. Cheap. Mean. Intimate. Adrian's entire face changed. "You touch her," he said, voice low and almost calm. "And I will make your last minute feel 10 years long." Damien smirked. "Still the same. Tell me, Sophia, did he also tell you he came into your father's house wearing a lie? Or did you fall in love before or after you became part of the assignment?" Lucia cried harder. Sophia felt the floor vanish under her. Assignment. There it was. The word every terrified wife dreads. Adrian didn't look at Sophia. He couldn't. "That's not what she was." Damien laughed. "Then why didn't you tell her the truth?" Because there was no good answer. And Damien knew it. For one awful second, Sophia saw the whole tragedy clearly. A man sent into her life with a mission, a woman starving for one honest thing, and love growing in the exact place it had no right to. Damien never saw the wrench Lucia kicked backward. It rolled beneath his foot. He slipped. Adrian moved. 2 strides, a twist, a crack. Damien hit the floor screaming, the cutter skidding away. Sophia grabbed Lucia so hard the little girl squealed, then buried her face in her daughter's hair and sobbed in relief. Over Lucia's shoulder, she saw Adrian standing above Damien, chest heaving, one hand around the man's collar. "You should have let me stay dead," Adrian said. Damien laughed bloodily. "It's too late. Arthur already knows where you'll be tomorrow." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Tomorrow?" Damien smiled through broken teeth. "The summit. He's going public." That changed everything. Arthur Laurent's Global Humanitarian Freight Summit was being broadcast live to investors, ministers, journalists, and charities across the world the next day. He planned to announce a political run and unveil a global child welfare initiative funded by his company. The cruelty of it made Sophia feel sick. A man moving children through cargo containers was about to stand on a stage and call himself their protector. Adrian wanted to disappear Lucia and Sophia first. Sophia refused. "No," she said. "He's been humiliating us in private for years. I want him destroyed in public." Adrian looked at her for a long moment. There was grief in his eyes, and admiration, and fear. "You understand what happens if we do this?" "Yes," Sophia said. "My life ends." He shook his head softly. "No, the lie ends." The summit hall glittered like wealth trying to look moral. Arthur stood under white lights in a navy suit, applause washing over him as he spoke about dignity, family, and the future of vulnerable children. Sophia thought she might vomit. Damien was missing, of course. Arthur probably assumed his son in everything but blood had failed, but not fatally. Then the giant screens behind the stage flickered. Arthur paused. The audience murmured. And Adrian Voss walked out from the side entrance in the same cheap black shoes he'd worn to his wedding, but now with the posture of a man no longer interested in pretending to be harmless. The room went dead quiet. Arthur's face lost color for the first time in Sophia's life. Adrian took the microphone. "My name is Adrian Voss," he said, and cameras all over the hall snapped toward him. 6 years ago, the world was told I died in a port explosion, while investigating an international trafficking network. I didn't die. I was buried under a lie, financed by the man standing on this stage. A wave of noise ripped through the audience. Arthur forced a laugh. Security. But security didn't move. They were too busy looking at the screens now flooding with manifests, route maps, payment trails, port footage, and names. Numbers, dates, children listed as medical equipment, containers rerouted through Laurent facilities. Sophia stepped into the aisle with Lucia in her arms. Then came the final blow. Her mother's voice filled the hall. If anything happens to me, trust him. You could hear people stop breathing. Arthur lunged for the podium controls. Too late. Adrian kept speaking, each word clean as a blade. I went into Arthur Laurent's home under an alias to gather evidence. What I didn't expect was to meet the family he had already begun destroying from the inside. His wife tried to stop him. His daughter paid the price for defying him. And the child he tried to claim as legacy became leverage. Journalists were already shouting, phones held high, live feeds exploding. The beautiful machinery of reputation bursting apart in real time. Arthur turned toward Sophia, and in front of the whole world, the mask finally fell. You ungrateful girl, he spat. Not daughter, not Sophia. Girl. It was such a small word, and it told the truth of him better than any document ever could. Sophia walked forward until she stood beneath the stage. For years, she said, voice shaking but loud. You called him a poor driver like that made him less than you. But the poorest man in this room was never him. It was you. Because you had everything, and still chose to become a monster. Arthur stared at her as cameras flashed. Then the officers moved in. Real ones this time. Not bought, not delayed, not looking away. When they took Arthur Laurent off that stage in handcuffs, the applause did not come immediately. First, there was silence, the kind that follows a building collapse. Then someone started clapping. Then 10 people. Then the whole hall erupted. Not for scandal, not for spectacle, for the end of terror wearing a tailored suit. The trials lasted months. Names fell, companies collapsed, ports were raided, children were found. Men who had called themselves untouchable learned what metal benches and fluorescent lights feel like. The world called Adrian Voss a hero. He hated the word. Heroes don't lie to their wives, he said one night on the apartment rooftop, months after the arrests, after Lucia had fallen asleep between them during a movie and Sophia carried her inside. The city glowed beneath them. For once, no one was chasing them. Sophia leaned against the railing. No. They just usually die before they get the chance to explain. He let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. Then he grew serious again. I should have told you. Yes, she said. I thought if I waited until it was over, I could give you a normal life. She looked at him. You were a dead man pretending to be a driver. Normal was never really on the table. That made him smile, but only for a second. I loved you before I had the right to, he admitted. That's the truth I was most ashamed of. Sophia frowned. Why ashamed? Because at first I told myself I was staying close to protect you. He swallowed. Then I realized I was staying because leaving you felt worse than dying again. For a long time, she said nothing. The wound between them had not vanished just because the villain had been exposed. Real betrayal doesn't evaporate. It bruises, it lingers, it asks to be touched carefully. But so does real love. And Sophia knew what was false in this story. It was not the nights he held their feverish daughter, not the tears in a hospital parking lot, not the way he looked at the empty crib they never filled, not the years he let the world call him nothing and never defended himself because defense would have cost them their lives. So she stepped closer and put his hand over her heart. "This is what you protected," she said. "Next time, protect it with the truth." His eyes filled. That was when she knew they might actually survive each other. A year later, they used part of the recovered Laurent money to open the Isabel House, a shelter and transit network for rescued children and women rebuilding their lives. Lucia painted crooked suns on the walls of the first playroom. Sophia ran the foundation with a kind of fierce gentleness her mother would have recognized instantly. And Adrian? Sometimes he still drove. Not because he had to, because he said the road reminded him who he had been when someone loved him before the world knew his name. People still stopped him sometimes. "Are you really Adrian Voss?" He would smile a little and say, "Depends who's asking." But at home, Lucia just called him Dad. And Sophia, on the nights when the city was quiet and memory was loud, would sometimes watch him from the doorway and think about that wedding day. The gun, the blood, the whisper. "If I tell you now, you'll never be safe again." He had been right. The truth had nearly destroyed everything. But it had also buried the right people in daylight. And in the end, the secret that stunned the world was not that a poor driver had been a dead investigator all along. It was that the quiet man everyone dismissed had carried enough truth in his silence to bring an empire to its knees. Sometimes the one the world calls nobody is the only reason the world learns the truth. And tell me in the comments, if you were Sophia, could you forgive a love that began with a lie but spent years proving it was real?